I'm Lily, 28F, and I never imagined I'd be sharing my story on Reddit. The past few years have been a whirlwind, filled with love, loss, and unexpected turns, and I need to get this off my chest. 5 years ago, I married my college sweetheart, Kevin, 30M. We were young and deeply in love, believing we had it all figured out. Kevin was my first serious relationship. We met in a literature class during our sophomore year. I was the quiet girl with glasses always lost in a book, while Kevin was the charming, ambitious guy who could effortlessly draw people into conversation. Our connection was instant. He'd caught me reading Wuthering Heights under a tree on campus, and with a smile he'd said, "You know, Heathcliff is a real jerk." I looked up, ready to defend my favorite anti-hero. But his playful grin disarmed me. We spent hours debating, laughing, and sharing our dreams, and before I knew it, I was head over heels. After graduation, we got married. I was working as a junior editor at a publishing house, a job I'd dreamed of since I was a little girl. Kevin had just landed a coveted position as a software engineer at a promising tech startup. We bought a small apartment in the city and began building our life together. Our future seemed bright, and we were ready to take on the world. But as the years went by, things started to change. Kevin became more consumed by his work. He stayed late at the office and often brought his laptop to bed, answering emails into the early hours. At first, I tried to be supportive, understanding how important his career was to him. But as time went on, I began to feel neglected. Our conversations became shorter, our date nights less frequent, and the spark that once burned so brightly between us began to fade. I tried to fill the growing void by throwing myself into my work. I worked long hours, took on additional projects, and eventually got promoted to senior editor. Yet, even as my career flourished, my marriage continued to crumble. Kevin and I drifted apart, becoming more like roommates than partners. We tried couples counseling, but it felt like we were just going through the motions. On our 4th wedding anniversary, I finally found the courage to have an honest conversation with Kevin. Over a dinner that felt more like an obligation than a celebration, we admitted that we had grown into different people with different dreams. The decision to divorce was mutual and amicable, but it still broke my heart. I spent weeks crying, mourning the loss of the life we'd built together and the future I'd imagined. Part 2: A New Beginning. After the divorce was finalized, I decided I needed a fresh start. I quit my job, packed up my apartment, and moved back to my hometown, a small coastal city where I'd grown up. I used my savings to start a freelance editing business, working from home and enjoying the slower pace of life. I found a cozy little cottage near the beach, and for the first time in years I felt a sense of peace. I spent my days reading manuscripts, taking long walks along the shore, and trying to reconnect with the girl I used to be. That's when my story took an unexpected turn. Last month I attended my high school best friend's wedding. I almost didn't go, thinking I wasn't ready to face a crowd, but something inside me told me I needed to step out of my comfort zone. As I sipped champagne at the reception, I spotted a familiar face across the room. It was Thomas, 29M, my childhood best friend and former next-door neighbor. Thomas and I had been inseparable growing up. We spent countless summers building sandcastles on the beach, riding our bikes through the neighborhood, and staying up late watching scary movies, which always ended with me hiding behind a pillow. He was the one person who truly understood me, who could make me laugh even on my worst days. But life had taken us in different directions. Thomas got a scholarship to an art school on the other side of the country, while I stayed local for college. We promised to keep in touch, but our communication dwindled to occasional likes on social media. Seeing him at the wedding was like a blast from the past. Thomas had grown into a handsome man, with the same mischievous glint in his eye that I remembered. He was now a successful freelance photographer, traveling the world for assignments and living an exciting nomadic life. We spent the entire reception catching up, laughing about old memories, and sharing stories about our lives. Thomas told me about his adventures photographing wildlife in Africa and capturing breathtaking landscapes in New Zealand. I shared my journey of becoming an editor and the ups and downs of my marriage and divorce. As the night went on, I felt a familiar warmth in my chest, a feeling I hadn't experienced in years. It was like no time had passed at all, like we were those two kids again, sharing secrets and dreams under the stars. Before we parted ways that night, Thomas asked if I'd like to meet up for coffee sometime. I agreed, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness, rediscovering friendship, and something more. Over the next few weeks, Thomas and I met regularly. We explored our old haunts, rediscovered our hometown, and spent hours talking about everything and nothing. The more time I spent with him, the more I realized how much I'd missed having him in my life. He made me feel alive again, reminding me of the carefree, adventurous girl I used to be. But I was also terrified. My divorce was still fresh, and the thought of opening my heart again was daunting. Thomas hadn't made any moves or suggested that he saw me as anything more than a friend, but sometimes I'd catch him looking at me in a way that made my heart skip a beat. And I couldn't deny that I'd started to see him differently too. I was confused and conflicted. Part of me wanted to take a chance and see where this could go, but another part was scared of ruining our friendship or getting hurt again. I didn't know if I was ready for another relationship, especially with someone who seemed to have such a free-spirited lifestyle. After weeks of indecision, I decided to be honest with Thomas about my feelings. We met at our favorite spot on the beach, the same place where we used to build sandcastles as kids. As we walked along the shore, I gathered my courage and told him everything how being around him made me feel, my fears about getting hurt again, and my confusion about what to do next. To my surprise, Thomas admitted that he had been feeling the same way. He confessed that seeing me at the wedding had stirred up emotions he thought he'd long buried. We talked for hours, sharing our fears and hopes. Thomas told me about his own struggles with commitment and how his nomadic lifestyle had been partly a way to avoid getting too close to anyone. We decided to take things slow, to explore our feelings without putting any pressure on ourselves. Over the next few weeks, our relationship deepened. We went on proper dates, rediscovering our hometown through new eyes. Thomas took me to hidden spots he'd found, perfect for photography, and I showed him my favorite quiet corners for reading and writing. One evening, as we were having a picnic in the park, Thomas surprised me with a photo album. It was filled with pictures he'd taken of us and our adventures over the past month, interspersed with old photos from our childhood that he'd gotten from his parents. The last page had a recent photo of us laughing together, with a note that said, "To new beginnings and rekindled friendships. Whatever happens, I'm glad you're back in my life." That gesture meant the world to me. It showed that Thomas understood the importance of our history and was equally invested in our present and future. We shared our first kiss that evening, and it felt like coming home. Trials and tribulations. However, our blossoming relationship wasn't without its challenges. Thomas received an offer for a 3-month photography assignment in Southeast Asia, an opportunity too good to pass up. The thought of him leaving so soon after we'd reconnected filled me with anxiety. All my old fears of abandonment and trust issues from my failed marriage came rushing back. We had a long, difficult conversation about it. Thomas assured me that he wanted to make this work and that he wasn't running away. We agreed to stay in touch through video calls and messages. He even suggested I could visit him for a week or two if my work allowed it. The day before Thomas left, we had a heart-to-heart. I opened up about my insecurities, how Kevin's emotional distance during our marriage had left me feeling unworthy of love. Thomas listened patiently and then shared his own fears of settling down, stemming from his parents' tumultuous relationship. We made a pact to communicate openly, to voice our fears instead of letting them fester. Thomas promised to check in regularly and to include me in his journey as much as possible. I, in turn, promised to work on my trust issues and not let my past experiences cloud our present. It's been 2 weeks since Thomas left. True to his word, he's been sending me beautiful photos and funny stories about his adventures. We video chat every few days, and even though I miss him terribly, seeing his face and hearing his voice helps ease the loneliness. I'm focusing on my own growth too. I've started writing a novel, something I'd always dreamed of but never had the courage to pursue. Thomas's encouragement gave me the push I needed. I write every day, pouring my emotions into the story, finding catharsis in creating something new, unexpected returns and realizations. A month into Thomas's trip, I received a message from Kevin. He wanted to meet up, saying he had something important to tell me. My heart raced with anxiety as I agreed to meet him. Over coffee, Kevin confessed that he had realized his mistakes after our divorce. He said he missed me, that he'd taken me for granted, and wanted to try again. His words were like a punch to the gut. Part of me had always wanted to hear this, to know that I hadn't been imagining things, that our love had been real. But another part felt nothing but confusion. Here I was, building something new with Thomas, and now my past was clawing its way back. I told Kevin I needed time to think. I didn't want to make a decision out of fear or confusion. That night, I called Thomas. I told him everything about Kevin, his confession, and how it had left me feeling torn. Thomas listened silently, his face serious. Then he spoke softly, telling me he understood but also reminding me that whatever choice I made, it needed to be for myself, not for anyone else. After hanging up, I spent the night tossing and turning, memories of my life with Kevin interspersed with the new moments I'd shared with Thomas. I realized that I'd been clinging to the past out of fear of the unknown. I had loved Kevin, but that chapter of my life was over. What I had with Thomas was new and fragile, but it was real. The next day, I met Kevin and told him my decision. I thanked him for his honesty but explained that I'd moved on and needed to see where this new path led me. He seemed hurt but accepted my decision, wishing me happiness, embracing the future. A few weeks later, Thomas returned home. earlier than expected. He said he'd missed me more than he'd anticipated, that being away had made him realize he didn't want to be anywhere but by my side. We decided to move forward together, taking things day by day but committed to each other. Today I'm in a much better place. I'm still writing, exploring my creativity, and finding joy in the little things. Thomas and I are planning a road trip along the coast, combining his love for photography and my love for storytelling. We're learning to trust, to communicate, and to build something new together. Looking back, I realize that sometimes life has a way of surprising you. It throws you curveballs, breaks your heart, and forces you to confront your deepest fears. But it also gives you second chances, unexpected connections, and the opportunity to rediscover yourself. I don't know where this journey will take me, but for the first time in a long time, I'm excited to find out. Reflections on growth and love. As I reflect on everything that has happened, I realize that love isn't just about grand gestures or fairy tale endings. It's about showing up, being vulnerable, and choosing each other every day, even when it's hard. It's about growth both individually and together. And it's about accepting that sometimes the greatest love story you'll ever have is the one you build with yourself. So here I am, a little bruised but stronger than ever, with a heart that's open to whatever comes next. And I know that no matter what, I'll be okay, because I've learned that true love starts with loving yourself first.